and we hope to. Manoj has joined. Manoj has joined. Manoj is from Silchar.
Assam.
Manoj is from Silchar. Then Guwahati, somebody is there.
So we have got about 1, 2, 3, 4 participants, those who have joined, other than us.
Budin Gogoi is joining from Assam. Is he in Chennai or in... Budin, you are in Chennai or Guwahati?
Today I came to Dibrugarh.
Okay, Dibrugarh. Okay.
Sir, I am at Dibrugarh now.
Okay, okay.
Okay, sir.
Manoj is joining, I hope so. Manoj is joining. Manoj is from Silchar. Katoch has joined. Last time Katoch could not join.
No voice coming. No one is talking, sir.
We are waiting for others to join, yes. Otherwise we can start.
No. I thought the voice is lost, that's why.
No. We are here.
Okay.
We will wait for 1 more minute and then we will begin.
Good evening, sir.
Manojji, namaste. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Thank you. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining again.
Welcome, Dr. Manoj. Dr. Bawari is already almost all, except Katoch, we are missing. Anyway, let me talk to Katoch and Dr. Sharma, we can start now.
Good evening, sir.
And Dr. Vasla from Delhi, she is not able because of the admissions are going on now.
Good evening, Sharma sir.
Namaste, how are you? Very
Fine,
good.
sir.
Very good. Good evening, friends. Welcome to another interesting session this evening. I welcome all of you, and I'm very happy to welcome Professor A.C. Pandey. He is our chief speaker for this evening, for this session. And this session is very important, and it holds very significance in the sense that even now for higher education, the institutional development plan is given high weightage. So Professor A.C. Pandey is currently working with IUC at NEC, and we welcome you, Professor Pandey. Thank you so much. And we have our friends. Just now we introduced to you all from covering all over India, from northeast up to the south of India tip. So here.
Your voice is lost.
Oh, I accidentally pressed the microphone and it got muted. So, and I now request Professor G.D. Sharma to say a few introductory words and introduce Professor Pandey in more detail, because he has been working closely with him, and then we can start. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Professor Pandey is a well-known nuclear scientist. He is heading the very important Inter-University Center of UGC on Nuclear Science Center. This center has contributed a great deal in the field of nuclear science. Many teachers come over here for their training of physics. Those physics teachers, they undergo training. Dr. Pandey has contributed in the area of planning, particularly developing a very important framework on institutional development plan. You can see that it has been detailed framework, so far not developed by any person, giving all aspects of the institutional development plan. You find the missions, objectives, and then going to the details of each and every aspect of it, then further going into the space management, other aspect of it. So you would find that very scientifically and detailed system of institutional development plan has been prepared under his guidance and leadership. There are a few prominent persons associated with this, but what is important, one of the mandate of National Education Policy 2020 is that every institution should have an institutional development plan, even before going for NEC assessment or external assessment by any other agency, NBA or any other. So this is going to be very important. I sent you one of the message yesterday, giving the excerpt from his initial statement on the planning institutional development plan was mentioned in the IDP framework, which is a guiding principle and a kind of a message which each member of higher education, particularly colleges and university, should take it seriously if they want to implement the NEP in the right way, as well as the true spirit of NEP. With this word, I would request Dr. Pandey. Dr. Pandey has been also member of several committees and also a board of management. We happen to be together in one of the board of management to Jamia Hamdal, and we are working together to see the institution develop. And he has been also member of the UGC several committees, and where he has significantly contributed to the development of area other than the nuclear science. And if you happen to come to Delhi, you must visit one of the best center on this nuclear science, ambience, development, as well as approaches. Those teachers from physics, those come here, they enjoy working here, they do the advanced level of research in nuclear science. With these words, I'll request Dr. Pandey to initiate the presentation. We have interactive session with the participants. We have participants from Kerala to Meghalaya, Assam, and Jammu also. So you find that we have, the number is very small, but they are all senior academic, and they all work in terms of development of the institute. Dr. Manoj is from economics, and he is also from Silchar. In fact, interestingly, let me share with you, Dr. Manoj is likely to retire after 3-4 months or so, but he still opted for this kind of program. He said, let me also see how much I can use this information knowledge and see development of institution and give some idea to them to go about it. With these words, Dr. Usman has very consistently working and actively participated in the program. Dr. Bauri has taken a very important initiative in her area, and then she's at this age, as you were finding difficult, I also found it difficult to get into the LMS. Let every one of them. Just now, before coming to the session, Dr. Bauri was on her laptop, and we were discussing, and finally she got through and she could see the IDP module and etc. So welcome to all of you. Bhiwan has joined, couldn't join, but he is from Tura, a farthest place in Meghalaya, and a tribal area, as well as a very important area from the point of view of geographical location. So Dr. Bhiwan has actively participated in our earlier program. Dr. Muhammad Ali, he is a technology person. He always enjoys the technology. And luckily, Dr. Mr. Abhimanyu has joined from Jammu. And I think Purbi would be joining today, being a women thing. I hope Purbi is from Assam, and she is an entrepreneur. And Mr. Katoch is also an entrepreneur. So we have two entrepreneurs, education entrepreneur, and the rest of the academic administrators, education, all are senior principals in the college. Dr. Pandey.
Purbi may be waiting for Chand to appear, and then she will come here.
Okay, so today Karwa Chauth is also there, so they might be participating in that ritual. So thank you very much, Professor Sharma ji, for giving this opportunity to interact with the learned participants. Although they are less in number, but definitely the motivation and also the way they are involved into this process, they will definitely make a dent in the higher education system. I will just give a small introduction, and then I will go for this presentation, which is already loaded there in your LMS. So you know, because now higher education institution is going to get transformed, and the landscape which has been provided or envisaged in this NEP 2020 need to be understood in great detail. Unless otherwise we understand what intent we have when we go for this new education policy, this implementation will not be a success at all. So for that perspective, people say that this IDP which has been developed has become more voluminous, but my perspective was to make it very clear in terms of what is required and what we need to do. And we were going through this module, there was a strategic management part. So strategic management means that is an important saying, that unless otherwise you know where to go, any path will lead to that place. That means if you wish to go to a level, you need to know that the optimum path for that place where we wish to go. So that is an important activity. And because of that, this IDP is here. And this IDP cannot be considered as the final document, but definitely it is going to get evolved in coming years. There is a premises on the basis of which this IDP has been developed. You know that we are going to get all those regulators which are there in higher education system together on one platform. So they'll have to be on the same page. So when I was going through the different prescriptions by these regulators, I found many anomalies. What were those anomalies? For example, if I talk about the rigid structure, that is the space planning, some regulator says that if you wish to engage 30 students, you require these many square meters in a class. If you go for other regulator, you will find that 40 students, some different prescription is there. On the other hand, NEP envisages that we should have a holistic education, we should have multidisciplinarity. And when we talk about multidisciplinarity, we have to handle many regulators. And in that case, you cannot overnight change your dimensions of the physical space. So that means in terms of the regulations, you will be failing and you will be on the other side of law, right? So for that matter, what we did, we took all those prescriptions from different regulators and we tried to make it so useful that if you wish to start another program having the same infrastructure, you do not have much problem and you can always think of moving in that direction. This was one aspect which we had in our mind. The second important thing was that technology has made all pervasive. Its presence all pervasive. If you see the post-COVID era, like now we have this particular mode by which we are interacting. This was not well accepted before COVID, and we used to come have this face-to-face meeting. This 7 to 9 was never expected that we will meet this way. For that, we have to have all such infrastructure requirement in place. The requirement of slow learner, the fast learner, the Divyang, and also if we wish to go for this cognitive flexibility built in the system. When I call this cognitive flexibility, that means the very idea of learning, unlearning and relearning because of the changing landscape, because of fast development in different disciplines. You have to have the ecosystem conducive for this kind of thing to happen. The other important thing was we, in our HEI, the continuous professional development is almost missing. When I say missing, in any of the services in country or outside country, the moment you get appointed, you are supposed to go through a rigorous training module. After that, you qualify to get posted somewhere and perform the job. In our case, if I talk about our policy mandate, we say that this is motivated, energized, capable. So we can always check that the capability is there. That means we select the best among the available lot, and they have got the degrees from the best institutions. They have studied a lot, but studying and knowing the subject is not enough. You have to know, you need to know the pedagogy, the way you are going to engage the class, and how you are going to get accepted among the system, among the student, and also with the system. Adjustment has to take place, for which the training need to be in such a manner that it is an integral part of our pedagogy. So CPT requirement is also important, and the learning infrastructure, if I talk about ICT related technology requirement, and I have already given the details of the physical infrastructure, and I have been involved into many such other institutions, and I have found that they, and this is a kind of accepted joke also, that if you go for any system in which sound system is to be used, the problem starts with the sound system itself. Many central universities, they have built very good auditorium, very good physical infrastructure, but the acoustics is not there. For example, in some other places where we require to have this codes, the standards, as an academic administrator, I do not know what are the standards for different purposes. So all those standards have been listed here, and other important thing is, Professor Sharma was talking about the accreditation and assessment. If you remember in recent past, many of the people are involved into generating data for a variety of purposes. If you go for NIRF, you have to get another set of data. If you wish to go for NAC, the other set of data is required. So most of the people are involved, and there are different point of time at which you have to generate the data. And when it is submitted, when it is compared with the IDEL HE portal, it is found that there are some discrepancies. It is not because we have done something deliberately wrong, but because the collection of data has taken at different places, different times. So maybe somebody has joined, somebody has left, and that number keeps suspicious intent in the minds of the bureaucrats. They say that this institution has given this data, whereas in other set of data, it is found something different. So keeping all these things in mind, and very recently, we have also come out with a guideline that mapification of maps. When I say mapification of maps, prior to this notification by DST, whenever you used to the data of Google or the maps which were there, you were not authorized. So now the possibility is that you can use the satellite data and you can have a vector map, raster scan, and for ease of doing business, there is no need to send the heavy bureaucratic sort of mechanism by which we send teams for physical inspection, and then we see that the team also does not do the job properly. So why don't we have a kind of self-disclosure, which is already mandated through UGC Act, and that is the IDEL HE portal is there. So we can expand the data capture format to capture many of the vital statistics, and it is the responsibility of the HEI to remain truthful to the society. The way we declare our income, and if suppose some assessment is done and if I am found that I have not declared something correctly, I become liable for my own declarations. So this is the way we should also rely on the institutions, and they should declare the self-disclosures, and those self-disclosures should be enough for different bodies to take it further for variety of purposes. So these are some of the things which we have taken into account, and I will share my slide. And in between, if suppose you have any question, you can always ask. There is no problem of flow. So could you please see my full screen slide?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I presented it before the Secretary of Higher Education and also Ministry, and I have taken the same slide. I have added some of the things. So quickly I will go through the slides, and also wherever some explanation is required, I will go into those details. There are many paragraphs in NEP which can be considered as explicit mention of IDP. But there are many other areas where, without mentioning IDP, the intent of the policy is also there, that the bearing is on this document, IDP, be it the stakeholders, how these stakeholders are going to get involved into the process of planning. You cannot give a rude shock to the planners, to the stakeholders, that suddenly in one day you have to modify and you have to come out with all provisions which are enshrined in NEP. So listing all those requirements, we give an opportunity to the stakeholders, especially the management, especially those who are investing in those higher education institutions. You know that 80% institutions are under private managed institutions category. So they should also get a time by which they can evolve to HEI that is multidisciplinary, that is giving holistic education, and also they can have an opportunity by which they can get clustered with many other institutions in neighboring areas, so that the intent of holistic education can be fulfilled. You know, most of the institutions that are the premier institutions, because of their presence, the vicinity developed in such a manner that they have become, those places have become costly. So if you wish to go to have another acre of land, it is next to impossible, number one. Number two, if you have that land available, then that is beyond your reach. So we have suggested that instead of horizontal expansion, we should go for vertical expansion. This is one part. Why we should go for vertical expansion? We cannot copy the model of US where the land mass is enough and people live there are less in number. If I talk about our country, if the census is to be believed, this is not a current data, but definitely we have 1.3 billion people and we have very less land mass which is available. And if suppose I prescribe that for IIM, for IIT, for some other institution, we need to have 500 acre, 1000 acre and the students population is only 2000, that is a sheer wastage of land. Why I say sheer wastage? Because that land is at the cost of agricultural land. So that agricultural land should not get converted for other purposes unless otherwise the institutions having this much area, they protect the forest that is there. So that may be another purpose, but you cannot dismantle the agricultural land and put something and go for horizontal expansion. So for that, this kind of idea should also be put in the minds of the planners, that we should be very choosy in terms of using the scarce land resource. So in that manner, we developed this strategic institutional plan, and we try to incorporate all the stakeholders, be it board members, institutional leaders, faculty, students, staff, how they are going to initiate the development process, how they are going to assess their progress, and if suppose we are sitting on this side, the regulator, how we can monitor the progress without bothering you of too many compliances. So that was what the basic intent of having this kind of elaborate document in terms of IDP having two parts, part 1 and part 2. So the other important thing was that we wanted to make the governance or the internal governance of higher education systems accountable, autonomous and decentralized by way of inclusion of technology in such a manner that whatever you do, it becomes transparent. So that was what the emphasis we gave into this particular document. Why we require the governance to be effective? Unless otherwise a person who is running the institution is self-motivated, self-governed, if everything is clear before him that these are the regulations, these are the requirements, and I have to fulfill these requirements by given timeline. And if I fail or if I do something wrong, I'll be caught and it will be my responsibility and the onus will be on me, on myself, to prove whether I am correct or not. So there is no mechanism by which I am going to send a team to verify those things. That is all available technologically. So that is what the purpose, an effective governance and leadership in higher education is envisaged, and that is to be put in place. The grievance redressal mechanism in a scenario where we are going to merge many of the regulators. The problems relating to multidisciplinary engagement, I have given a hint to that the space planning, the teachers' requirement, and suddenly you cannot add many teachers for a course which is just a few credit course, and that is a kind of optional course. So Professor of Practice was also recommended in this course of action, and that has now become, has received the finality in terms of the guidelines have already been issued. The other purpose of those, that mechanism of having Professor of Practice was that if suppose you need to have a person who is accomplished in a particular art, culture, for example, a dance exponent or a singer, he cannot have a formal degree. If I ask them to bring your NET certificate or MA or MSc in that particular, it is not possible. The fellow has given his entire life in making himself perfect in some particular dimension. So that is enough for him to become a professor who can practice and who can tell the people without having a formal education, which we require in our case, the way we demand in higher education system. So that has been accepted, and that is in pipeline. The second important thing is, because now you are sharing your information through this online platform, and when this is started, Zoom was banned. You also remember that way. And we also face similar kind of problem when we are handling, for example, I developed MRI magnet, and a news item appeared in some newspaper that this is going to replace or reduce the burden of import. Some name was there from the China side that will be not depending much on China. In 1 week, my Gmail server was, my Jimbra server was hijacked, hacked, and all the data was, they tried to steal, but we did not have anything in there. And we got a report from Ministry of Home Affairs about the vulnerability. So we had to remove everything and we have to install the Jimbra server. And till date, I am facing to get communication with the Gmail with my own mail server. So these are some of the challenges. And because of that, we need to have some mechanism by which this particular thing is put in place. The other important thing is that if you remember, we came out with some of the guidelines for Academic Bank of Credit, ABC. In ABC, it was envisaged that the credits which we earn can be deposited and then it can be authenticated, and I can, after a threshold of credits are there, I can go for some kind of certification or degree or whatever. If you do not have that kind of robust ICT infrastructure, the chances of forged documents or forged sort of credits will always be there, and then this system will get burdened with these kind of, what should I say, that is another problem. The second important thing, which is already there in many of the institutions, they face about the documents, the degree certificates, and that is also being forced. So we are adding one more vulnerability to the system when we have this academic bank of credit and the credit transfers takes place. So the way we put in place GST, and that is successful because ICT infrastructure is robust. So we should have ICT infrastructure in higher education institutions also, which provides a backbone to many of the institutions, or I can say all the institutions, wherein my whatever credit I earn, it goes and gets stored. Nobody can either manipulate or add or delete. Whatever is there can be there in a storage, and that can be used for authenticating, for getting a credit for towards a degree. So that is another important thing which need to have in place. Other important thing is that we cannot in a day mobilize the resources. And I told you that 80% of the institutions are under private governance. So they should get some time to mobilize the resources, and then only they can themselves for institutional excellence. If they are going to invest too much in physical resources, that will be a waste. So instead of wasting the resources in physical form, they can engage the local community. They can bring highest standards of financial probity and accountability to invite a good amount of funds, whatever means they can adopt. So that will be another important part which need to be put in place. We also thought of having a paradigm shift approach in bringing the continuous improvement in the system and the feedback system. And we know we have talked about learning outcome based framework, and learning outcome framework depends on formative assessment, not the summative assessment. So not only feedback, but the continuous assessment also can be through ICT backbone framework, in which I may be given an opportunity to excel or to showcase whether I have achieved that outcome or not. So if that is there, then the idea of having all the institutions as a degree granting institution can be thought. Otherwise, it is not possible to recognize all the institutions as degree granting institution, although the lofty ideals in NEP does envisage that we should have this kind of, why a university should get burdened for taking examination of those students or those institutions that are not directly connected to them. So the kind of affiliating burden is there on the institutions, and because of those burden, the one-time great institutions have gone down in their reputation in terms of their product So that is another important thing which we need to put in place. When I talk about optimal learning environment, so we should have relevant curriculum. The pedagogy should be engaging at all levels for the slow learners, for the fast learners. I was talking about the formative assessment, and also the student should be supported. If suppose some student is finding some difficulty in learning, relearning, the support should be there, so that ultimate aim of an institution's of effective learning is fulfilled. Emphasis should be given on assessment, which should be outcome based, and that can be comparable. It is not that I have got some degree from somewhere which is of no use if I go to some other institution, because the learning outcomes expected out of that particular level, I'm talking about level because we also came out with the National Higher Education Quality Framework that was to be synced with the National Skill Quality Framework and also NCVET Vocational Education. 3 parallel verticals were integrated in such a manner that all these 3 skills, vocational education and general education, are at the same level. The cross migration is possible. The other important thing is that the campuses are the places of happening. So not only what we teach in the class, most of the teaching, most of the learning takes place outside the class. So the environment should be vibrant. Vibrant in the sense that there must be possibility of having different kind of clubs, different kind of other resources which are there. The infrastructure should be so motivating, so engaging that the student spends a lot of time having Wi-Fi, having all the connectivity in the garden instead of the classroom. So that is another important thing. And the fourth important thing is differential learning, because we are still facing problem in terms of socio-economic background, the disadvantaged groups that are there in different pockets of the country, how they can be brought into the mainstream, how we can bridge the gap of have-nots or digital divide which is there. So these are the challenges by which we are we have to keep these things in mind. And for differential learning purposes, socio-economically disadvantaged backgrounds people, the slow learners, gifted students, online education, this is distance education learning mode, they can all be integrated in such a manner that not only the GER increases but also the quality education, because NEP talks about not only quantity but quality is also important. So this was the background. Now coming to the framework and the template which we have developed, we have kept in our mind that we should be always mindful of the requirement of next century or from this century also. I'll come to that part, that how this knowledge domain has shrunk. When I talk about the first industrial revolution, it took many years, and that peak was spread over more than 50 years, or you can say up to 70 years. The second industrial revolution, which was there in terms of that lasted lesser as compared to the first one, and the third again lasted lesser as compared to the second one. I'll give those numbers. And this fourth industrial revolution, if you take a blink and it will go in 10, 20 years, another kind of revolution will take place, and this disruptive knowledges will come into place. So what is there that we should have a kind of flexibility in our system in terms of curricular flexibility, in terms of cognitive flexibility, in terms of the practices which we adopt in academics, the mobility of the students, internal as well as external. We can have a bunch of courses or basket of courses that can be offered, and we can also look at, or a kind of technology watch should be there, so that we can include those things which have not yet come into our daily existence. So emerging areas of knowledge, for example, if I can teach something in terms of computer modeling of society. When I say computer modeling of society, means I can predict the social unrest which is going to likely take place with the help of some some equations, its parameterization, its mathematical model. So that is another important challenge which we can always think of, and which it is doable, it is not impossible. Likewise, how we are going to mitigate the problem of constant change. The change is taking place every day. So we have to induct different kind of skills, competencies, and the higher level of competencies in students. It is not only limited to knowledge, understanding, and applications. The higher level of competencies are that we should to equip our students in analyzing, in reviewing, in critical thinking, in terms of creativity. So these are some of things which need to be put in place, and how we are going to assess a student or assess an institution for the cognitive sort of achievement, which is again difficult. We cannot parameterize, we cannot come out with those batteries by which the assessment becomes easier. Likewise, the goals of higher education is a global citizen. It is not only a citizen who is looking after the requirement of a local sort of issue, but we in NAP, we are envisaging that our citizen should be a global citizen. Vocal for local is one part, but catering to the requirement of global problem is another one. And I will cite two examples. In 1960s, when the code was written for computer codes for variety of purposes, the coders, those who wrote the code, they forgot to use the format that was DDMMYY, means 2 digit for dates, 2 digit for month, and 2 digits for years. But when we reached in 1990, the people became scared. Why they started fearing that in 2000, whether the computer will take 2000 or 1900 or 2100. So that problem was known at that point of time, Y2K problem. India took advantage, and many of the institutions, they were teaching COBOL, that was common business oriented language. And it was not necessary that person having a background in engineering or technology, they only go for these COBOL. Even commerce people, even other they can go for certification. And India came to the rescue of that problem, and many of the people, many of the young students, they went abroad and they resolved the problem before it was onset. So in that process, business processes outsourcing, BPO, that idea came into the mind. And you know, many of the institutions, for example, Infosys, Wipro, they came into existence, and we solved the problem, and we became number one in terms of software manpower. The second important thing is during this COVID, by an estimate, it was being projected that India will take several years, the way we did for polio, for others. And it will be difficult to have two shots for 1.3 billion people. But you know, it is before you have witnessed how quickly we went for different kind of vaccines. We produced, and not only we resolved our problem, but we also supplied this vaccine to others. So when I talk about focused on citizen formation, India being ethically and also culturally so strong that we not only believe the definition of me, the definition of my, the definition of mine is not limited to me, my children, my parents, my next kith and kin, but that is expanded to whole world. So that is what we call Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So pluralism, be it democracy, be it contemporaneity, and its mission is always a goal for us, for India, and we have to have our products of HEI, they should look at these goals. So in that case, what we did, I'm sorry I'm using what we did because that was 1 year long exercise, and every day we had to discuss many of the things, and then it became internalized as if many of the things we started thinking as if it is revolving around us. So the consultative process, the need assessment, was to be carried out, how to quantify the indicators, because the policy makers, the implementers, they have a problem, how to gauge the progress of an institution, whether they have moved significantly in a direction where they have to go or not. So what are those goals, what are those indicators, what are the time-bound targets that was to be captured? And based on these goals and priorities, you have to first have a kind of SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. You have to identify your capacity, whether you can go for that or not. If you can go there, then what are the gaps which is like targeted and where you are. So that gaps are to be identified at an organizational level. When you have identified those gaps, then you have to go for annual activity plan. It is not that in one go or in 1 month. You have to have a concerted effort towards implementing or developing those activity plans annually. And then you can have a sort of short-term, mid-term, long-term goals that can be again reviewed if they are quantifiable. The mechanism I talked about, ease of doing business. Ease of doing business means we are not supposed to bother you again and again as a regulator. You yourself should be accountable to monitor your progress, and on a dashboard, your progress is seen by anybody, including your stakeholders. So that kind of transparent mechanism, for example, if you have added few more floors on your building, that can be reflected using the Google map, the vector map, the scan map. If you have added many trees, that is all visible. There is no need to visit your campus physically, but it is all available on the Google map. So that can be integrated with your website, with your other things, which can be monitored by the regulators. Likewise, how we can internationalize and globalize. I took two examples, Y2K and vaccine. Why can't we have our own soft power by which we can not only invite, we can go outside the country, our students can go outside, but the foreign students can come to our campuses. So internationalization and globalization. And very recently when the Ukraine war was there, you might have come to know that many of the students, they go outside for pursuing their MBBS degree. But if you talk about MBBS degree, having learned there, having graduated in a foreign country, they are not aware about the common language by which a patient talks to a doctor. So their degree becomes sometimes useless if they are going to practice in the country where they belong to. So why can't we go for such kind of opportunity, availing that opportunity in which our wealth is drained in terms of the migrating population. So for every institution, it was envisaged that we will have a 5-year IDP, which will contain a description of measures of sustainability. You know, there are many goals of sustainable development goals, and those sustainability, be it hunger, drinking water, energy, many of the things. So it should start from the campus itself so that it goes directly to the mind of the student, and then that student becomes enlightened and sustainability issues are resolved forever. So IDP will also be a living document, evolving as a strategic planning capacity of the institution, its increase, and there will be baseline data. And for that, we have given some kind of self-disclosure documents which can be uploaded, and if HECI comes into being, that HECI can devise a mechanism by which these baseline data can be periodically reviewed with the development, and that is what we envisaged, and a holistic framework was put in place. So what are the components of IDP which I am going to talk about, why it is important? If I talk about the optimal learning environment, and the institution is student friendly, student is having all those pedagogical tools which are relevant for the current day knowledge, and also we can invite the foreign students to these campuses. We need to have many such things. I have talked about global goals, strategic programs and goals, developmental objectives. We should have a kind of curriculum excellence objective, and then pedagogical approach should also be there, in which indivisibility, interdisciplinarity, theory practice articulation. I have talked about the professor of practice, formation and formation integrated to social reality, keeping in mind the backward regions, the non-availability of teachers, quality teachers there, the demand and supply. Some of the institutions have high demand ratio. Somewhere, if I analyze, I have not included that slide in which I have gone through this ICE data. Majority of institutions have enrollment less than 200 or 300. Number of teachers less than 5. So that is not a kind of optimum infrastructure in which we can think of holistic or multidisciplinarity. Teaching policy, training policy, research policy, they should be there, very clearly defined. The management policy, community service, how we can engage the community. So the three dimensions means teaching, research and community engagement. They are put in place so that this teacher also values that not only I have to teach, but I have to contribute to the knowledge, and also I have to engage with the community to know the real problems, and we have to struggle again through research how those problems, the real problems, can be solved. That is our social responsibility, serving people with special educational needs, the people having dyslexia, people having autism, people having differently abled people. They need to be served. The staff, the continuous professional development of faculty, technical and administrative staff. The targets should be student-centric. The metrics should be objective. The metrics should be observable, can be quantified. These are some of the things. And then always we need to analyze the gap, where the gap stands and how that gap is to be filled in coming days. This can always be done if you have a good financial sustainability or budgetary sustainability. So you can look at the gaps and then come out with your whatever budget, whatever finances you have. Accordingly, you can make a plan. You can consult your stakeholder. You can document all those things. You can make them interested so that your alumni, your others, they can contribute if they consider this program as a viable. You can follow up. You can evaluate. And then there is a template for mandatory disclosure. Again, this is from the viewpoint of ease of doing business, not harassing the institutions or institutions' stakeholders. That is another important thing. And then minimum standards for HEI framework for campus planning and design. I have included some of the things like there is a case in which in 350 acres, you can accommodate 25,000 students. So people view as if I'm recommending that you should have 350 acre. No, you can have a smaller acreage, but how you can accommodate 25 to 30,000 students in a campus which is only 350 acres. And you will find many such institutions in the country. For example, IIMs, they have 800 or 1,000 acre, but they teach only 200 or 500 at the max. At the maximum, total student population is this much. So we have to cater to the requirement of the country from that perspective, that if GE are to be risen to that level with the quality content, we should always think of those standards, and the guidelines should be put in place. So the development process which is suggested here is we will have IDP committee the way we have IQAC in many of the institutions, and they are well aware, and I guess the participants in this particular program, they can offer their services as consultant, because they will be on the other side, they will be having a good exposure, and they will have a good idea how they can offer their consultancy to the institutions. So how to have this SWOT analysis? Sometimes we also fail in assessing our own strength, weaknesses. And very recently we reviewed the progress of NAC, and NAC itself did not have SWOG of NEC. So they were asking all the institutions to come out with their SWOG analysis, but they did not bother about their own SWOG. So initial version of IDP can be drafted, periodic review is expected, and then implementation plan is awarded on the basis of a competitive selection process carried out by committee. When I talk about awarded means, if suppose you need to add some building, some infrastructure, definitely you can have a competitive process by which this can be done. And this framework establishes the cross linkage which I talked about, 3 verticals of higher education quality framework, NSQF, that is skill quality framework, and other framework is NCVET, that is vocational education. So these 3 frameworks in which not only classroom teaching, but also some skills are to be imparted, and some vocational courses can also be offered, or vocationalization of higher education is also important, so that the product becomes useful, not useless, because he can offer something directly to the society. So in this case, the objective of IDP, I'm not going to define all these things. Define mission, what is your mission is there, the need assessment, the priorities. You may have several goals, but you have to prioritize, because you have to have a kind of commitment to the institution in terms of your budgetary strength, in terms of your regulators' requirement. So accordingly, you can quantify your goals and indicators which are time-bound targets, your capacity in terms of what you are going to fill, the gaps you have identified, and how this can be done with the annual plans or sequentially in terms of incremental way. You can add those deficiency, or you can fill those gaps by having your concerted plan. So this 5-year plan, which will be, again, I'm talking about that living document having a baseline data. So this is the template. The next important thing, that like vision and mission, I have given enough idea what sustainability is, how we are going to make our country transformed as a vibrant knowledge society. So this is not that I have written vision for everybody. It is not a document which fits all sizes. It gives a kind of range. It gives a kind of indication or some kind of guideline by which you can develop your own document, having your own vision, your mission, how you are going to play an important role, your university, your institution in the contemporary world, how we are going to make critical thinking or the critical rationality by which intellectual willingness of permanent change comes into picture, and you are not opposing the change. We generally oppose the change just for the sake of opposing, because it is a change. So I'm talking about this. I did refer about this part, that when in 1830 Faraday discovered electricity, 50 years it took to get implemented. Laws where science gave this idea in 1830. So 50 years took for electricity. Very recently, in this century, 1953, Watson-Crick gave the model of DNA. And within 20 years, genetic engineering came into picture. Very recently, in 1991, when I was researching in nanotechnology, Hijima of Japan, he gave carbon nanotube. And 10 years period was enough for getting this science implemented in a technology that was logic circuit. So that means the knowledge which was generated in last 30 years is more than what we generated in last 5,000 years. So that is giving an idea how this time domain is shrinking. So we should not wait. Just a minute. नेहरू जी हम बस एक कॉल में टॉक करते हैं, बात करते हैं थोड़ी देर में, लेक्चर चल रहा है, ठीक है जी. So the idea is that the revolutions which will take place in coming years will last not 50 years or 30 years or 10 years. It may go for very high peak for a shorter period. So we have to train our students in such a manner that we can reap the benefit of that disruptive technology. So if I talk about this industry 4.0, we do not have qualified manpower who can engage the classes at this point of time. And that also prompted us to go for professor of practice, for cyber physical systems, for IoT, Internet of Things, for artificial intelligence, for machine learning, for 3D printing, whatnot that has come. Nobody in our ecosystem, they know. We have not got any formal education. So for that matter, how we are going to induct the experts, how our next generation is going to be trained, so that learning, relearning, unlearning, and also cognitive flexibility is to be put in place. And I was talking about these three, and I was chairman of this committee that gave you multiple entry exit sort of avenue. This is general education academics. We have got two more verticals, skills as well as vocational. The lateral movement from one system to other system, or this system to other system, was made possible, for which the credits were made uniform, that if you have 36 to 40 credit, again you see, it is not that we have made it very strict. It is a range. Credit is defined. So if 1 year you have spent, you should earn about 36 to 40 in either of the system. In either of system means if you wish to migrate from this level to this level, you can go directly to, either you can exit the system, or if you wish to go for another level of the teaching, learning, you can move to other vertical, or you can progress in your own vertical. The problem was that we have yet to develop the recognition of prior language in terms of quantification, in terms of making the quality packs, and that work is going on. Once it is done, then this higher level mobility will also be possible. So academic credentials, how we are going to accept whether this particular student's stream having this 108 credit or 120 credit can go directly to bachelor's degree, general education 3-year program, provided the quality packs are made available. So that is an ongoing process and people are developing that way. So if I talk about the template for IDP, so I have already taken 1 hour. So if you need rest, I can. Sharmaji?
Yes. I think now we can have a 10 minutes of break. Dr. R.C. Sharma, can we think of having a break for 10 minutes?
Yes, sir. Let us take.
We can have 10 minutes break. I think it was a very wonderful presentation.
Oh, fantastic.
And it was I am feeling that it should be heard by almost all the institutions had in the country and out abroad also.
Certainly.
So very hard work has been done in this area, and you elaborated it quite large and linked it with the NEP very effectively. I think we'll have a lot of discussion on this. Let's break for all the participants. Shall we break for 10 minutes and then come back?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We break for 10 minutes. We'll reassemble at 8:10.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Need to have IDP, and how we are going to cater to the requirements of higher education institutions that is fast evolving, fast changing. So production of knowledge in border and strategic areas for the socio-economic development, pursuing innovation. Why it is required? Because we have to keep in mind the sustainable development goals. So I talk about goals, that is assessing the operational strategies of how we are going to build in the interdisciplinarity in our system. Till date, the higher education institutions or higher education system was fragmented, and the fragmentation means that the compartments were so rigid that it was not possible for cross migrating from one area to other area. And why it was required? Because the solution of a real problem lies in the interface. It is not one discipline that is going to solve the problem that are real in nature. Likewise, we have to incorporate the teaching practices, the epistemological view that accounts for complex nature of formal and informal scientific and traditional knowledge. That has to be put in place, maximizing the principle of flexibility. And I have given the perspective with regard to the space-related things, the teachers that are to be prepared for coming exigencies, for multicultural interactions. Many such things are there. How we are going to prepare our faculty or technical staff or administrative staff so that they are well equipped with the knowledge. So capacity building program. then we should have the initiatives in terms of the curricular enhancement, curricular advancement for design thinking, for holistic health or organic living. See, I'm giving these all things because this is all our soft power, or we have to make ourselves equipped with the soft power. Enhancing university management, incorporating to academic practices and administrative actions the principles of sustainability. If I talk about global goals, so this SDG 4, that is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities. India will be promoted as a global study destination. I gave an example of Ukraine crisis. Likewise, we also wish to become Vishwaguru. If I talk about Vishwaguru, it is not that only I give this kind of sermon, but also we have to behave in such a fashion that people do consider the way they used to come to Nalanda and Takshila. An international student office for each of HEI is to be put in place. The research teaching collaborations, the industry-driven program should be there in universities. The promotion of research collaboration, the student exchanges, the pedagogical process that should be geared to take all these challenges. For example, supporting the overall academic success of students, creating opportunities to gain knowledge, skills and credentials in high demand field. So you have to identify what those high demand fields are, how we are going to add new programs or expand the current programs so that high demand fields can be catered to. Then our institutional pedagogical process, I have listed those attributes. Indivisibility means we should have development of teaching, community services, research activities. If I talk about the 3 dimensions, the first dimension is teaching, the other one is research, and the third one is community engagement. So it should not happen that these 3 are in 3 different dimensions. So they should all get imbibed in such a manner that the research helps the teaching to improve, the research helps the community problems to be solved, and sometimes community gives an idea how we are going to take some of the research projects which are beneficial and which can give immediate results. So interdisciplinarity formation integrated to social reality, we should not only limit it to developing and publishing only papers, but it should have some societal value also, which you see reflected in your PhD regulations, which we developed. I also chaired that committee in which some of the malpractices of publishing by giving some money in some predatory journals, that is to be stopped. Theory practice articulation. What was happening that I am a graduate in physics, but I cannot change the bulb. I cannot do simple things. So there is a complete disconnect between theory and practice. So that kind of articulation is required. And for this, we need to have robust policies, be it teaching, training, research, community service, management policy, social responsibility, serving people. I have already given these important activities. And then we should also have the 3 other stakeholders: faculty, technical, administrative staff, and student body. They should also get engaged and they should be motivated to the level that they all work together without opposing each other's activities. There are many other pedagogical goals in which we need to think of developing a good sort of quantifiable goals. For example, how we are going to measure the success of students. Till date, we were only focusing on how many students pass by first division, second division, something like that. But what is the overall academic success of students, that should be put in place. That should be the cognitive ability, the functionality which we are going to impart. Again, I said that it is not possible to quantify, but we have to be all these things in my mind. Increasing overall graduation rates, retention rates, creating opportunities, identifying new sources of funding, enhancing the university's regional and national reputation, which is being reflected in NIRF, in other times, or QS ranking. Not all, but definitely some of the institutions should figure in those ranks, increasing the graduation rates of underrepresented students, employment placement rate, communication with the stakeholders, retention rates of underrepresented students. These are some of the things which I'm not going to read it out, but definitely it is there and we have to work for including them as a specific or strategic goals. The developmental objective is again geared up to take the challenges of excellence in all areas, be it pedagogy, be it curriculum, be it academic administration. And an academic administrator, we fail miserably. So we have to put this level of competency. Those who are going to head as director, dean, vice chancellor, they should also be trained. They should not be left as to their own design. So that part is also important. And examination reforms, infrastructural development maintenance, partnering with knowledge hubs, stakeholder involvement, manpower management, legal compliances. And I was going through the scenario. Most of the institutions, for example, UGC, any case in the country, litigation, they will by default put UGC as one of the party without being informed like UGC that somebody has filed a case against you. Large number of cases are filed and they are pending and nobody cares about that. So that is also a kind of burden and we have to have such kind of system in which these issues are also resolved. Then the pedagogical processes. So we have to write down what is reasonable, attainable sort of institutional capacity, which we can measure and we can correlate with the funding support. So that we have given this excellence objectives and also some of the things relating to, and when I put the FSR, that like faculty student ratio, this was a difficult proposition because this Pharmacy Council of India, they say that for M Pharma, you should have 1:3. That means every 3 students should have 1 faculty. If you go for Council of Architecture, there is something different. If you go for BCom, if you go for MCom, so we tried to rationalize and we looked at the data which is already published in our ISHE. You will be surprised to note that many of the states, they are very like having unfavorable FSR, having 60 or more. In some cases, Pondicherry, the number is less. The FSR is supportive, is good. So how we can rationalize, and in one day, I cannot supply that many teachers. So how to have a sort of, without burdening the institution for compliances, we have given some rational basis of finding out the student-teacher ratio by having visiting professors, by having this professor of practice, and then tenure track. These are all like recommendations which we can think of, and this is again in terms of rating what is at this point of time and how I'm going to improve in next 5 years. So that is what a kind of self-declared objective, self-declared metric targets, which is there in terms of H-index, the research capabilities, the student facilities, equity initiative index, how many SC students are there. And I was there in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Most of the seats of SC students remain vacant, but this time we decided that we have to nurture those students, those who go to IITs instead, they can come to Institute of Science, Bangalore. And these are some of the initiatives which we can always talk about. If I have my eyes on these parameters by which I can improve my rating, or I can make it available to the most deserving candidates without compromising the quality. So some of the requirements are from the viewpoint of statutory obligation. Statutory obligation means I have to have this committee against sexual harassment. I have to have a friendly environment for physically challenged people. So that is all mandated by some kind of legislation or some kind of Supreme Court judgment. Likewise, the green campuses, that is another requirement that we have to have. So these are some of the indicators which need to be put in place, and how we are going to modernize our laboratories, strengthen our laboratories for UG teaching, for PG teaching, how these classrooms are equipped with modern sort of gadgets for online, for ODL, for blended classes. Then learning training resources using video lectures, flipped classrooms, making available the resources, electronic resources, digital libraries, and also that too at the tip of a student having smartphones. So the smartphones can be used for not only recreation for looking at YouTube and other video, but they can be engaged through this kind of formative assessment and many other things which need to be put in place if we have optimal resources to engage the students in terms of pedagogy. So these are some of the things which I'm not going to read, but definitely they are there. And once you have noticed, you have gone through those metric, you have identified what is the current scenario and what is expected, the standard and also the actual. You compute what is the gap, and that gap, how we are going to fill it and what will be the timeline. So IDP revolves around these three things. Number one, you should have a standard. Number two, you have to assess your performance. You have to assess your achieved goals or targets against those standards. You have to find the deviations where you deviate from the standards, and then how you are going to fill those gaps by having your own means and ways, like the resources, the implementation plan, the institutional project budget, how you are going to describe your goals, which are prioritized in what manner, why. So these are some of things which need to be put in place, and accordingly the gap analysis or SWOT analysis will lead you to the desired goals. So another important thing that is, I talked about mandatory disclosure, and that is still date. If I go by the unique identity and I'm facing problem in academic bank of credit, in terms of NAC assessment, in terms of ISHE data, or in terms of the teachers that are there. One same teacher is mapped in many institutions, and we do not have any means by which we can check this kind of irregularity. On one hand, we say that there are no teachers, the teachers are not getting employment. On the other side, the same teacher is being mapped at several places. So for that, we have requested, and we are developing a way by which a unique ID is given to higher education institution. Number one, teacher can be given unique ID. Students can have unique ID that can remain sort of unique throughout the student life cycle. That means if I am migrating from one place to other place, the same number, it may be whatever you decide, because Supreme Court, when we were deciding, there was a judgment that you cannot use Aadhaar. And then it was a problem for us to include that Aadhaar is going to be the unique ID. But very recently, Government of India has come out with a new scheme that is called My Pehchan, Meri Pehchan. Under that, your driving license, your account number, your mobile number, your Aadhaar number, your bank account number, they're all like linked to each other. Any of these documents can be used and your unique identity can be established. So why this is required? Because the direct beneficiary transfer, number one. Number two, the coming out with the reasonable number that is not having any kind of inflated sort of or deflated situation in which I'm not able to disclose or I'm hiding something, that becomes next to impossible. So that is what is important, and unless otherwise this one nation, one data is there, we'll have several such problems. So we are working in that direction so that this becomes unique for everybody. What are the suggested minimum standards? So I'll go quickly for faculty student ratio, physical space, and we have suggested some of the things, and when it was put on public platform, I got several comments from across the country, and there were some newspaper articles also in which they criticized that we are making the life miserable of the unemployed youth, but that is not the case. When we gave the complete statistics, what is actual scenario and what we have come with our recommendations, though that is not the case. Actually, we are promoting, we are giving an opportunity, and we also came out with a sort of what is requirement at this point of time and how we are going to fulfill that requirement in coming days, because that much trained manpower is not available. So if I say that no, you have to go for science 1x to 10, I will not find those many teachers in the system, those who can be appointed. If suppose I am willing or any HEI is willing to appoint that many teachers, that means that will be on the other side of law. So that is not the situation which should be avoided. So we have suggested some of the things, and that has gone through the stakeholder consultation. Whatever we received, accordingly we address those issues. Likewise, teaching universities, autonomous colleges have 25% student strength of the number of students in its undergraduate students to allow for what? For mobility. Suppose if I have talked about internal mobility, or if I talked about ABC, if suppose all the positions in first year, second year, third year is filled, that provision of mobility will be not entertained, or it will be only on the piece of paper. So that kind of flexibility in the system is also suggested, and that is under the framework of FDP, of IDP. Then in case of upgrade plans for academic infrastructure, for online learning, for blended learning, for library, for student support system, for any other academic infrastructure, or the capacity building programs, continuous professional development of teachers. Also, this standards for other activities, for example, assessment and enhancement of human resources, develop this specific plans for increasing participation from SEDGs. For example, if HEI is sitting in a pocket where many of the underprivileged students are there, how to make a plan so that they can get admitted and they can get facilitated by HEI. So that provision is also there, and this policy document does talk about all those things, and accordingly that get reflected if you have in your mind when you have planned for your activities. So I got an opportunity to represent before Delhi Development Authority, DDA. So they came out with their master plan, and I represented. I wanted to make amendment in their DDA master plan so that that can be a reference to many of the master plans across the country. Why it was required that we suggested that 30,000 students can be catered where we have only 350 or 400 acres of land. How this can be done? Using this floor area ratio, maximum coverage, what is the zonal area, how we can put the sports and recreation, parking and landscape. So sometimes the academic administrators are challenged with these kind of information. So that is again a kind of handbook to them so that they can groom themselves. So we selected several kind of categories of institutions. Greenfield means you are starting something ab initio, the field is with you and nothing is there, so you have to start from scratch. So what should be there in case of greenfield? Some of the institutions are already in place and they are doing well, they are top in that area, but they cannot expand. So that is brownfield. How they can go for their capacity building, how they can retrofit many of the good things which are there, and they have to be in sync with the requirements of new education policy, or for that matter, the pedagogical tools which have evolved and now they are in place. So we suggested many such things, and accordingly we gave a few case studies, and the second part of the document does have all those details. For example, if you see this proposed area allocation, I have given the number here, 30,000 students. If suppose 30,000 students are to be accommodated, how much area is required for staff, their family members, the quarters which are there, students, those who are residing on the campus. So that area was calculated as per the norms, and we have not deviated anything in terms of the already existing regulations of UGC or other regulatory bodies. So the zones are to be created, how much area can be allotted to academic, residential, sports and recreation, parking. And we have suggested that we should go for, we should promote the public transport primarily for two reasons. Number one, the economic disparity becomes so glaring in the campus if suppose somebody comes with Mercedes and somebody comes with cycle or barefoot. So remove those parking lot from the campus, let the student be kind of on the same footing. They should come to the school without having any baggage which he or she is carrying with him or her. So that is what, this is again a kind of detail in which what should be the faculty-student ratio, how many classrooms, how many faculty rooms are to be allotted. So that gives a kind of schematic for developing the plan. There are certain standards that need to be followed, and we generally ignore. When I was responsible for as a Vice Chancellor of University, so we only said that go and get your NBC certificate, and that NBC certificate was also not robust in the sense that they did not check, and sometimes the quality of construction is so poor that in a simple rain or in some kind of earthquake, the building gets bulldozed or it falls down, and the calamity is there in terms of the young students. So many such regulations, guidelines, standards are prescribed by the Government of India. That is all listed here, and they are to be followed. If you go for example, radiation, for example, our center follows radiation protection, follows the AERB codes. And we are responsible to AERB for statutory liability, which I cannot say that I do not know. Likewise, many such things are there for removal of hazardous substances, for IT infrastructure, the monitors which we use, and if it is being recycled, what norms are to be followed, vulnerability atlas of India, if I am sitting in a seismic zone, what precautions are to be made so that my building is at least some kind of protection is there from earthquake. So these are some of the things which are prescribed. It is there, but we do not know. Similarly, the fire-related activity norms, which we generally ignore, and in case of fire, you might have seen during COVID, it was also flagged when many of the hospitals, they caught fire, and many of the patients, those who were admitted for getting cured from COVID, they died because of the fire, which was the hazardous hazard, and that was not put in place the safety requirements. So for the campus development, many things are there, like how linkages are to be developed, how we have to have different zones for different activities, what mobility is to be put place, how we can make this campus inclusive, how we can think of safety, how we can have a phased plan of developing our campuses in first phase, second phase, the utilities and services, its sustainability, its resilience, form. Many such things are there which is under the domain of expertise of architect, but we consulted many architects who developed many campuses in the country, and they are all acknowledged in our document. So we got the idea from them, and that is only indicative in the sense that whosoever is going to have retrofitting of their campuses or going to build the new campuses, they should have one compendium available at one place for their guidance, and definitely they can consult others for making it more exhaustive. When I compare myself means a human being is compared with animal. There are three basic differences. First one is because I have the capability of empathy, samanubhuti, whereas the animals have sympathy. They can sympathize. If suppose some animal is suffering, the other animal get sympathy with that animal. But in our case, I can change my frame of reference, and I can put my frame of reference with you, and I start thinking as if I think in your terms. So that kind of capability we have. The second important thing is we are creative people. If it is my first house, it will be different. Second house, if I am going to construct, it will be entirely different. Whereas in case of animals, you can identify that this particular nest belongs to which bird. Over the years, that change has not taken place. Similar kind of structure that is ingrained in their genetic code, and they build their nest alike. But in our case, it keeps on changing. That is what is manifested here. You can always have some suggestion indicative, but the person who is going to implement either brown field or green field, they can always use their creativity in making their campus looking good or looking best among the available campuses in the country or across the world. The other important thing is that we should always have in our mind that these campuses should be sustainable. Sustainable in the sense because we are passing through a very bad time. When I say bad time means that we are endangered. The species are getting extinct. The groundwater is getting depleted, and on some day you will come to know that there is no drinking water. So we have to have all those good practices in place so that we can water recharge, we can have less consumption of fossil fuel, we can have the greenery in the campus, not only for preserving the climate, but also giving a message to the children who are coming to your campus that, look, these are the things that you have to inculcate in your habit, and you have to always work for the sustainability of the globe, not your campus, but entire globe. There is no political boundary for atmosphere or for that matter the weather. It crosses one boundary without informing you. So whatever happens in western disturbances, Delhi gets cold, Delhi gets warm effects immediately. So green initiatives are to be put in place and minimizing the carbon footprint, preserving the natural resources, preserving the water conservation, water related issues, the natural topography. And when I was in Jhansi, in Bundelkhand, I found that many of the hillocks were removed because of illegal mining. So these topography are also important. Environmental awareness and sensitivity, minimizing fossil fuel consumption, use recycled material, alternative energy. I am emphasizing all these points because it is the sustainability that becomes important at end, and we have to optimize, you have to standardize all the strategies. While adopting a kind of technology, we have to keep all these things in mind so that natural preservation and conservation strategy is put in place. Last but not the least, because this CPD, blended, ODL and concept of clusters, like I told you that it is not possible for any small institute that is having only 200 students or less than 5 faculty to evolve as multidisciplinary. So what ultimately can happen that several such institutions, they can club together, they can get a cluster and they can identify their role. The student can seamlessly get enrolled to this cluster and get advantage of the courses that are being offered in those institutions under one cluster. So clustering is important. Again, refrain by using of using these merger acquisition. I'm not talking about those managerial concepts. But clustering means coming together and offering a kind of seamless connectivity by way of CPD, blended, and all other ICT infrastructure, so that that cluster becomes multidisciplinary and provides holistic education. And for that, we have given several examples in which we can leverage the technology, acknowledging the potential risks and their dangers. We have to carefully design and appropriately scale the pilot studies to determine what are the benefits we are going to get from digital or online education. We have to optimize and expand the existing digital platform, and now this 5G has come. So the places where the teachers' availability is not there, we can have the presence of our online courses, MOOCs courses, or in coming days when augmented reality or this AR and VR, visual reality is there, my class can be engaged having this AR and VR in the class where in a way, phantom can go and teach as if I am there. So that is also a possibility which may become reality in coming days. So how we are going to use this online and digital education? And again, I talked about that instead of having this applying, understanding, remembering, we have to focus on analyzing, evaluating and creating, which are high level of competencies. And these competencies are changing, and for that we have to change our assessment system. ICT has become all pervasive. So for beginner, how we are going to use it, how we are going to use it for teaching the subject, how we are going to understand how this can be used, infusing, and finally specializing in the use and design of the ICT. For example, I gave an example of modeling social unrest in coming days. It means if I know my subject, social change, I can use this ICT to develop a model and to predict the society or its behavior in coming days. So this is the growth of ICT usage, and nobody can say that he or she is not touched by ICT. ICT has grown vertically as also horizontally. Everybody, we are all using this platform without having much of knowledge of how this functions. So application of ICT has become a kind of integral part of our life, or teachers' life. So that way, how this these 4 stages can be applied, can be understood, and how we can develop our curriculum in such a manner that the simple literacy or content knowledge or ICT across the subject infusing specialization will lead to real problem solving. This is what LMS, Dr. Sharma ji has already provided you a tool. So that is all like at what level you are and how you are going to graduate from one level to other level. So you can be simply user, and at a point of time you can be change agent by transforming the content in such a manner that it becomes a tool for others to use. So that is another part which we can always think of, and that is to be facilitated by having the optimal environment in that particular campus. So that is what we have talked about, and many such other emerging technologies are there. NETF, you might have come to know that this NEP has suggested NETF, and NETF has just been constituted. The former chairman AICT, Anil Shastra is chairing this. So they will be suggesting how this technology can be used and made all pervasive to all the institutions. So that is what is all suggested in our policy document. The only problem is that we have to find ways by which we can implement, we can find the different gateways, the bandwidth, the 3-tier architecture. So these are all like technical part, how we have to have DRS site where our, if suppose something crashes here, it is stored somewhere. If I talk about ABC, that is Academic Bank of Credit. So our system should be so robust that in case of disaster, if it strikes, nothing happens to our system, or reservoir remains same. This is not to be talked about. Lastly, I'll give a glimpse. Greenfield, brownfield, and brownfield redevelopment. So I took example of Jamia Hamdard, where this campus was redeveloped by putting many such things, and they have come out with the medical faculty also. That medical faculty is growing. Professor Sharma ji was talking about our involvement. We are there in BOM, not the BOM which we use every day, but that is Board of Management. So Professor Sharma is also there, and I'm also there. And we are making it sure that the institution grows in such a manner that it helps the student community. The other campus is Allahabad, from where I belong to, but I will not talk about that because that is another case study. Nalanda University, Rajgir, which is being developed as Greenfield. We are recreating the one which was already there. The other one is IIT Gandhinagar. It was again Greenfield, new campus was developed. Another campus is South Asian University, New Delhi. So you could see the form, the linkages, the mobility, the greenery, the sustainability. So if you go into those details, if you wish to understand what the campuses are, how they can be made vibrant, how the campus life becomes so vibrant that a student, when comes to this campus, is filled with many ideas and become creative. So that is all because of the way we develop campuses and the way the environment is made conducive for learning. So whatever I have shown here is different kind of or categories of institution, public, private. The one which was started from scratch, the one which was having brownfield means already developed, redevelopment of those brown. And while consulting, we did meet many people from different parts of the country, and also I made a presentation before Delhi Development Authority to impress upon that, see, this is important activity and we should come out with some kind of plan which becomes role model for all the development authorities across the country. And this was the committee, and they helped me profusely in discussing things and also developing everything which is before you. So I have concluded. We still have 15 minutes. If any questions are there, you are most welcome. You can please.
Thank you very much. It was an absolutely wonderful presentation, and it's a very comprehensive and very down to earth. In fact, if NEP is to be implemented, the IDP is the only way, and IDP is sincerely and honestly implemented, I think your NEP would be achieved. I'm really amazed to see your in-depth analysis for almost a year. It is quite reflecting that how much work has gone in this. Thank you, Professor Pandey. I think it's a wonderful presentation, and I have a mind that your presentation should be heard by almost all the institutions in higher education, Vice Chancellor, the principals of colleges, and other people, and we'll see to it that this happens in one or other way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and very excellent presentation. Dr. Sharma?
Okay, friends, you can either unmute yourself or you can type into the... Okay, Dr. Gogoi.
Dr. Gogoi had raised we can invite one after another.
Dr. Gogoi, Dr. Usman.
Dr. Usman is there, Biwan is there, Dr. Bawri is there, and Manoj is also raising hand. So they have raised the hand. Shall I ask Manoj to say, and then we come to Gogoi? Manoj?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I am thankful to Professor A.C. Pandey for his nice, comprehensive and exhaustive presentation, which is also thought-provoking. And practically, the IDP is highly necessary for the successful implementation of NEP 2020. But sir, I have some question relating to the student-teacher ratio, and another thing is that whatever the ideas, whatever the policies are coming or is developed, all these are coming from higher authorities, and we are not finding any scope of ours for ourselves to give our ideas forward, which may be more effective for the IDP. That is at college level, or for example, since NEP involves from the school level education to postgraduate or doctorate level education. So in that scenario, if there is a scope for disseminating ideas or proposals which may be more effective, because those people who are working on the field, they are much aware about the resource availability and the problems they are facing regarding the institution, as well as what kind of institutional development is required. But so this is one point, and another is the student-teacher ratios. There is obviously some ideal student-teacher ratio for each subject, but since the institution does not have always the capacity to employ or appoint the faculties as per the requirement, it is obviously depending on the government. That is, if it is an institution which is governed by the state government, then it is depending on the state government whether they are going to sanction the post or not. Particularly in my college, as an example, I can say it here, that is, in the Department of Political Science, there are nearly more than 100 students, but unfortunately, after retirement of the faculties, till now, it is about 3 years, we are not getting any post sanctioned for the political science subject. And for this purpose, we need to get some permission from the government even to advertise though the posts are sanctioned. So under such situation, we have to run the college, appointing some part-time faculties. So these are the realities, sir. So in this regard, I would like to get some highlights regarding how the student-teacher ratio can be maintained properly, and regarding the ideas or the suggestions for which are required to be disseminated from the bottom level to the upwards. Thank you, sir, for your nice presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much for raising the issues. I think we can take 2 more questions and then request Dr. Pandey to respond. Gogoi wanted to say, please be brief.
Yes, sir. My question is very specific. Dr. Manoj Pal has very rightly pointed out the situation in India now. We have been talking about our new education policy since 2018 and declared in 2022, but nothing has been so far initiated at the central government or state government level. But Professor Pandey is very rightly focused on the whole issues, how we can be, we were the Vishwaguru and we can go to the Vishwaguru, to be Vishwaguru. But will we be able to actually implement the new education policy, or it will fail again in 1986 new education policy?
Okay. Dr. Usman, this is third question, and then we have a presentation from...
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to congratulate and thank Professor Pandey, sir, for the highly illuminating presentation. And I thank Sharmaji also for arranging this presentation for us, sir. Actually, I have dozens of questions to ask, but I will limit to 1 or 2 queries. The FSR, the issue of FSR already mentioned by Manoj Kumar. I fully endorse that views. Secondly, sir, you have mentioned about the opportunity, the cost of the land for preparation of the IDP. And you have taken agricultural purpose as the most important thing, by considering the opportunity cost of the land for IDP. And you have suggested some extent also for institution, for example, for 30,000 students, 20,000 students in that way. So what is the rationale of this? How you arrive at these figures? That is my first point. Secondly, you have mentioned about 2 premier indices, Governance Quality Index and Academic Excellence Index. See, can we have a uniform indices for all the institutions across the country, these indices? For example, you have institution in the rural side, the urban side, and so on. You have autonomous colleges, you have affiliated colleges, constituent colleges, and so on. So can we have a common norm for that, for this governance quality index and academic quality index? And my third question is, you have mentioned about the campus resilience. And that is a new concept for me. Could you explain, sir, that more? What is the meaning of that? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
I will go one by one the question.
Dr. Pandey, can I take one more from Vivan, who is raising his... Vivan from Tura.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Kindly be brief.
Yes, first of all, thank you, Dr. Professor Pandey, for that beautiful explanation. I just want to ask a question, whether before the NEP was framed, whether all the stakeholders were actually consulted. Because when we look at the situation in the Northeast, since I'm from Northeast, I'm looking at my own, the situation that we have here. We are affiliated to Northeastern Hill University, which is a central university. Out of almost 83 colleges that are affiliated to the university, maybe colleges mentioning, maybe numbering only around 10 of them do have around 3,000 students in campus. The rest are going to struggle, especially with the NEP 2020 when it's asking for multiple entry and exit. Now, taking another consideration is the land factor, the geographical factor that we are facing here in the Northeast. Because in the Northeast, as you know, mountainous region, we do not have big places. So even in my college, we have only, say, 12 acres of land. how do we develop a green corridor, etc. Though in our campus, being in the northeast, we have a lot of green trees, etc. But how do we develop? Because we cannot make even the building plan that we have. We are planning to have a separate library, a hall. It's not possible for us because of the situation of the land, the geographical condition of the land. So I just want to ask whether it was widely consulted with other stakeholders before we really framed the NEP, because the situation in which we are now is completely challenging when it comes to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that a lot of questions have come related to SSR and other aspects. Now, Dr. Pandey, there are many questions, but let's see. We can go.
I will try to answer with whatever ability or capability I have. So, number one, I'll start from back. Like Vivan has asked the question for the northeastern states. His question is about whether we consulted the stakeholders or not. So this NEP was having a very wider consultative process. I'm sorry, because we do not listen when something is put on public notice and we invite suggestions. So it goes unnoticed. Maybe several reasons are there, but it was put on public platform, and many suggestions were invited, and all those suggestions were incorporated in policy document, number one. Number two, when we developed our IDP, it was also put on like in social media, in wide consultative. And if you look at your Arunachal Pradesh Rajiv Gandhi University, you'll find that draft document is still lying there. And we received a lot of, and I have not those numbers. For example, for PhD regulations, more than 7,000 comments were there. For this particular, thousands of comments were there about the document, their suggestions, their other things. So that consultative mode is not like somebody has forced on you to accept it. It is, but the problem is 1.3 billion people, you get very like meager response whenever you go to the public. So I accept that part. The second question about your hilly area, and we have been mindful of catering to the requirements of the hilly areas, and we have recommended for different sort of criteria for the campuses in the hills, because you will not find the plain lands. And if suppose land is available for few, say for example, if you develop it, if you make it plain, it will be having a large number of large financial implication will be there. If you leave that terrain as such, the usable land will be limited, right? These are the things which we have already taken into our consideration, and that is recommended in policy for the hill area. How much requirement will be there, that is all there. Number three, about the smaller colleges, how they are going to get evolved as a multidisciplinary. And if you remember in my last part of my talk, I talked about clustering. I did not ask to get all the institutions evolved as multidisciplinary. No, you are excelling in arts college, as science college, as commerce college, but you can make a cluster of all of these colleges. They can come together, and a student has to be benefited. If suppose I want to take a course from your college, or I want to take another course from different discipline, some different sort of domain of knowledge, the student should not be deprived of those opportunities, right? So that clustering will definitely come into fora in coming days, and when we learn how we are going to respond to these requirements, we'll definitely find ways, right? So I guess I have answered your three questions which you asked.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Now coming to the other part, which was mainly about somebody asked about the resilience. Resilience is, its meaning is that how flexible you are, right? If I talk about that your campus should keep evolving. For example, today I am talking about computer science. Tomorrow, artificial intelligence will come there. Then augmented reality, virtual reality. And if suppose I start prescribing that, see, this much area is required for engaging electronics student, for computer science, for arts, right? That is not going to help you because you will have hundreds of classrooms for hundreds of subjects. No. Resilience means the campuses are flexible towards catering to the requirements of different disciplines in such a manner that same space can be utilized for different purposes, right? So another important thing is that if you come from a disaster-stricken area, right? If you are coming from Andhra Pradesh, you are coming from where the chances of cyclone hitting is there. So these structures which are there in form of colleges, higher education institutions, they sometimes provide shelter to the people who are living in that vicinity. So that should also be, and for example, in case of COVID, many of the institutions, they became isolation wards. So as my presence of higher education institution should be so flexible that I can address such kind of exigencies and such kind of evolutionary practices in coming days seamlessly without having much of changes in our system. So that answers your question about the resilience. About the teacher, and other question was also asked by Mr. Mukeshji, that government does not allow you to recruit. This is one problem. The problem is non-availability of teachers. So can you please see one, I have shared one such view graph here in which I calculated how much teachers will be required for higher education institutions, general education as well as, could you see please, आप देख रहे हैं इसको? हमने share किया ये document.
Yes, it is there.
So
yes, you are seeing it.
So how many universities we have, how many colleges we have, how many standalone institutions are, and total student enrollment I have calculated this much number. And if I take the conservative approach of having 1:25, I will require about 10 lakh students in higher education institutions. Likewise, in technical education sector, I'll require 5 lakh teachers, this much. 15 lakh teachers are required if I have to maintain 1:25 in general education and 1:20 in technical education. 15 lakh teachers are required. And out of these 15 lakh teachers, the general cadre ratio is like 1:2:4. So for system HEI, we have 4 assistant professors, 2 readers, and 1 professor. So that means 1.5 to 2.5 lakh professors will be required, 4.5 lakh associate professor, and 9 lakhs about the assistant professors are required. If you go by the policy statement, the policy says that all the vacant positions of faculty across the country has to be filled immediately. There must not be a case where headless institution is there. So that is all written in that document. Now it comes to the implementation. So I agree with you that there are issues with the implementation, and somebody said that it came into 2018, then 20, now 2022, nothing is happening. It is not the case. Country like India, education being in concurrent list, it is very difficult to convince the stakeholders. Many of the states, they have taken a proactive role. The governors are sitting with the vice chancellors. They are discussing what are the problems they have, and they are resolving the issues. So it is taking its own course, but definitely the way it should have progressed, I am also not satisfied. This IDP is hanging for last 1 year, and thanks to Professor Sharma who has taken note of this. But that is again a problem. Nobody wants to go through those details and also translate the ideas into action. And that is gross, what should I say? Better not to say much, but definitely the country is moving in that direction. Unless otherwise we gear up to take the challenges of coming generation. And we have to make ourselves, I cannot only say that I have become Vishwaguru. I have to teach all the necessary things in my classrooms so that my students are equipped with the necessary skills, the knowledge, so that they can compete with the international community. So that part has to take place, and we are moving. Definitely the progress is slow.
Yeah. very good progress. In fact, this document itself is a very important document to be read by everyone, and because it has been systematically put all the aspects which the NEP required to be implemented, and it can be implemented through IDP, and there are no other ways to implement it. Dr. Bawari, you had raised some issues. I read your comments. Yes,
may I talk, sir? May I talk, sir?
Mohammed Ali, I'll come to you.
Yes, sir.
After Bawari.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. I had just been talking to some of the principals of some other colleges in the rest of India. It seems that according to NEP, what we are going to teach in the first semester, they are not teaching the same subjects in their colleges. Now, suppose a student studies here and he or she wants to go elsewhere in India and study the second semester that side. Will they be having a uniform syllabus, uniform subjects?
Madam, as far as uniformity is concerned, uniformity is not desirable. Why it is not desirable? Because autonomy does provide you a kind of liberty to excel in academic area by having your own choices. When I talk about mobility, so we have come out with a framework that is called NHEQF, National Higher Education Quality Framework. So
Yes.
earlier when we split our annual system into semester system, it was unmindful. I'm sorry to say, because we just split the syllabus into two parts, and I was shocked to see that some of the courses were being taught in first semester, whereas there is no prerequisite, the concept of prerequisite, unless otherwise you know the tools. You cannot learn that particular course in the first semester. It would have been taught in the fourth semester. It is being taught in first semester. So we have suggested that prerequisite should be there, and there is a systematic body of knowledge. The building blocks is not like random. You can koi bhi cheez kahin chipka dijiye, is not possible. You have to grow in a systematic manner. So once you follow, and for example, if I teach physics, so unless otherwise I teach mathematical physics, I cannot go directly to quantum mechanics. So when I teach quantum mechanics, number of courses, the credits which are being awarded, that is going to be uniform across the country. And why it is not only limited to our country. We have signed Washington Accord. We have signed many other accords in which for internationalization, our framework in terms of number of credits has to be in correspondence with the other education systems across the world. So if I'm going to talk about my correspondence with the international community, why can't we solve this problem in our country by looking at the requirements of, and when we work in isolation, this problem always is there. That we teach something here and we do not care about our student. If I am student-centric, I will definitely look what is desirable and what should be done in terms of the mobility of the student nationally, internal as well as external mobility. So the perspective has to change. The moment the perspective changes, you are the competent person. You sit in your board of studies. You sit in the faculty board. You have got all the autonomy to frame your curricula. Where from this particular idea comes that government is forcing you not to do that. So that autonomy is there. Yes.
That's very wonderful.
Yes,
in fact, about 20 years back, we had worked on the National Qualification Framework. I'm glad the other day when they were talking, I said, now it's being implemented. This National Qualification Framework will allow a movement of the student from one end to another end. That's what we call Higher Education Qualification Framework. What they are assessing is the outcome of learning, and the outcome of learning is being rated as a credit earned by them. And the credit bank is allowing people to move from here to there, and that is a new concept which is coming. In course of time, you find that there need to be a same syllabus everywhere. There may be same level of outcome in terms of credit which is being earned. I think that we worked about 20 years back on that. I published a book on the report on National Qualification Framework, and that is the beginning of mobility, multidisciplinarity, a change. I'm glad that this is being focused on National Higher Education Qualification Framework. Dr. Pandey, you have really gone into an in-depth aspect of it, seeing how it is distributed. Dr. Mohammed Ali?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Sir, recently the UGC released the draft policy on the autonomy, sir, conferring autonomy, and I think the process is somewhat eased also. This is a very good step, sir, towards increasing the GR and FSR and even the multidisciplinary approach, sir. So I think we are in the right direction, especially like transforming the landscape of our country's education through NEP, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. You didn't raise any question. I thought you had any question. You can. Any other person has a last question, then we have already crossed the timing. Okay, Dr. Sharma, it's your say.
I must say that it has been one of the best presentations we have. So thank you very much, Professor Pandey. And I may like to request our colleagues, because if they still have some, like Dr. Usman was saying that he has a lot of questions. So what I suggest that kindly post these questions into the LMS, and Dr. Pandey has access to it. So then he can type the answer, and then that can be shared with everyone. So that can be done. So kindly share your questions in there, or you can email it to me or WhatsApp it to me, and then I will request Professor Pandey to provide his perspective on that. So thank you very much.
Dr. Sharma,
yeah.
Can we ask Professor Pandey to share the PPT with us, or is it possible?
Yes, it is available.
Okay, sure.
His all the presentation, Dr. Sharma ji, bataiye, Dr. Sharma.
Yeah, we will add it to the LMS so that you can.
I will do it, yes.
A complete presentation will be available to you on LMS shortly, maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow, anything, because Dr. Sharma is quick at that, and he would make it available by next day, 2 days time.
The recording of this session will be made available to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
So friends, thank you so much, and have a nice night. It has been.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving this opportunity to interact with learned people. It is we who has to take this further. So we have to own this.
Sir,
Certainly.
we hope to meet you again, sir. Pandey, sir.
Yes,
we
yeah.
hope to meet you again.
Yes, definitely, definitely. We'll try to arrange one more session, not only this group, but larger group. I have made it that it should be heard by larger group. When we have a 3 or 4 days workshop on these issues, we'll request Dr. Pandey to be with us, and as well as we make his presentation and discussion available to larger number of people. Thank you very much, Dr. Pandey. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
There is so much to
Thank you,
learn
sir.
from Professor Pandey, so we will request him with some other unique topic also for our colleagues.
Yeah.
Namaskar.
Okay, ji. Good night.
Namaste.
Good night.